Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Welcome to the program. It's a gray day. As I look out my window, sort of fits my mood. That's a warning for some of you to cut and run. Whoa, you know, I read a few things since last we spoke, and they're people who are smarter than I, and more capable than I think, of articulating what they're feeling. And what they are feeling is very much like what I am feeling. I think most of you are feeling as well. And when people that you look to for exactly that kind of intelligent, coherent, what am I trying to say? You look to them for help in being able to yourself articulate what you're feeling, and what you're feeling so often it's if not despair, it's close. It's close. And I find myself looking for people who aren't quite there yet and are still seeing things, I think, clearly, and still got a lot of fight in them. And the people that I yesterday, for some reason, found myself, turning to, hoping they might buck me up a bit, are themselves. It sounds to me, in reading them, despairing. One in particular. So I just I don't know. Let me share some of this. One of them is a man who I think used to be a Republican, right? Some of the, I think some of the people doing the best work now about seeing what is happening clearly are people who were once Republicans. And that is David Brooks. And he wrote something that was a little over my head yesterday or the day before, that was about philosophers. And when it's something I never studied, I never read any philosophers. I really didn't. It's the kind of intellectual rigor and exercise that I guess I'm too lazy to attempt. It makes my head hurt. It's the same kind of intellectual laziness that doesn't allow me to even read from stem to stern my own brother's work, because he too is a very very intellectual. Every stone gets looked under and explained and woven into whatever tapestries creating. And I get lost when people are that smart. And so some of David Brooks, what he was trying to tell me yesterday, I sort of did what I often do, which is sort of, sometimes when you're reading something, you don't quite understand it, but you understand it enough to move on to the next paragraph. I sort of read it like that, but what I want to share with you is part of it. He asked himself a question, and the question is the question that I have asked, and you undoubtedly have asked, and we don't come up with answers. And it's the question he tries to answer. And here's the question: how is it that half of America looks at Donald Trump and does not find him morally repellent? There's the question. And my despair in the last decade, which has only grown by leaps and bounds almost on a daily basis now, is tethered to that question. Because I fear the answer to it is too frightening. Because there has to be an answer. How is it that half of America looks at Donald Trump and does not find him morally repellent? And I mean, Brooks obviously goes on to, broaden the question and to note that some not only don't find him morally repellent, but they find him heroic and admirable. They practically worship him. He can do no wrong. And then his next question: what has brought us to this state of moral numbness? And here's where he then gets philosophical and talks about the great moral philosopher Alasdair MacIntyre, who I never even heard of, and he goes back to the Greeks and then and gets us somehow to the Enlightenment, and therein apparently is some of the problem. And then the Enlightenment gives rise to the United States and to a different way of viewing man's. I'm going to use man as a catch-all. Man's place in it. And I'm not even going to try to present it to you, but he seems to be suggesting that somewhere along the line, the idea of individualism that America represented, and I think this has to be part of the problem, has gone awry, right? People don't understand it. And they've lost all the kind of moral structures and underpinnings that yeah, I mean, again, I can't get into it. I recommend you seek this out. I think he wrote this for the Atlantic. I think that's where you might find it. Um, but I mean, he explained. So Americans have now twice elected a man who clearly has no sense of morality. Clearly, none. And they don't care. Um, and Brooks says, but Trump speaks the language that so many Americans just get. They understand it. And again, it's the idea of America gone awry. Trump speaks the language like I want, right? He speaks about power. I can do this, of superiority. And Brooks calls it the language, he speaks the language of self, of gain, and of acquisition, which is, if you think about it, exactly what American culture in large part has become. It's a totally consumerist, capitalist culture in which getting and spending and is the and pleasure, and it has rotted us. I mean, if you follow this, he reads that there were times in human history where there were these ethics, and I know my brother again. One of his specialties. He's an expert in honor cultures, cultures that the number one value was honor. Man, that is so not anywhere on our culture's list of things to reach for or to guide us. I mean, the reality is, and I've said this, Donald Trump is in many ways the perfect president for us in this time because he is an embodiment of the moral rot. And what's fascinating, if you think about it, is our side of the divide and the other side of the divide both feel that we have gone morally astray, right? The MAGA folks, think we have lost our way. We've abandoned the traditional family. We this, that, and the other, and from their core beliefs, we are the ones. These children of the '60s, right? And yet we, on the other hand, coming with this wholly different view of what we value, equality, right? Difference, embracing the all. That's the idea. But then we find out there's a just huge, huge number of people who don't want the embrace, don't want to be in an embrace with the likes of us. So I don't know. I just there's a selfishness, a shallow, such a shallow understanding of whatever purpose exists on this earth for us. Um, it is a kind of hedonistic, but I don't see some people. Some people don't see it in themselves. the getters and spenders. They don't see it. Anyway, it is that that extraordinary acceptance and even elevation as something admirable of a man as loathsome, morally absolutely empty as Donald Trump. And that reality scares the shit out of me. Because then you see the cruelty. You see all the things that Trump does and his base cheer. Uh, and it's incomprehensible to us. Okay, so David Brooks in the Atlantic is one of and 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 he here's one other quote and we live in a fragmented society made up of individuals who have no conception of common good, no way to come together to pursue a common good, and no way to persuade one another what the common good might be. I was thinking of that uh, the other day with the horror of the Texas flood. Because, you know, the fact is we now know that there were many efforts um, at the county level, at the state level, in that area to get a system in place, an early warning system that would work better and prevent the huge death toll that we are now seeing. And every time those efforts came up in a Texas legislative body, they failed. Even a year after the last really bad flood there, I think it was 87 or something, it failed. And it was Republicans who were voting against it because why? Because of the because they knew that in order to have these systems, you had to spend money. And in order to have the money to spend, you needed taxes, revenue. And inasmuch as it would require perhaps an increase, in other words, they'd have to say to their constituents, we want to get all of us this system to warn us so people don't needlessly die, and we're all going to have to chip in a little bit more so we can have it. And they knew, and they were right, that their constituents would resoundingly say, "Are you kidding me?" To raise someone's taxes is to not get reelected. That's where we've gotten to as a country. So and at the base of that is no comprehension of something called the common good, and no sense of responsibility to chip in to something that you might not see immediate gain from, but that is clearly the right thing for the most people in your community. That ethic has been destroyed in the last, I don't know what, 30 years. Again, Republicans doing it. And you see it operating even here in the city. I mean, taxes rarely go up, because they know we've all been inured to thinking, you don't raise my taxes. And then we wonder why potholes aren't filled and this isn't done and that isn't done. And people literally don't even make the connections. Obviously, all of this requires good governance too, good shepherding of the tax dollars. But the common good is as alien an idea in this country. As a matter of fact, you know what it sounds like? The common good? It sounds like socialism. It sounds like communism or something. Americans are more comfortable with the law of the jungle. The big guys eat the little guys. Power is all you need. Power. And so, of course, Donald Trump looks like a leader. I saw something, speaking of that, I saw something the friggin' governor of Texas said in response to a reporter's question about, shouldn't maybe the legislature have, I mean, couldn't we have, I mean, blah, 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 blah. And this always happens after children are mowed down and in schools, after, an event like this, those of us who ask questions like what happened wrong here, how can we prevent, are often told to shut up because now is not the time. Now is the time for thoughts and prayers and grieving and all of that. So it's unseemly. And then, of course, it never gets taken up again. But here's what Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, said. Who's to blame? That's the word choice of losers. Every football team makes mistakes. The losing teams are the ones that try to point out who's to blame. The championship teams are the ones that say, don't worry about it, ma'am. We've got this. I read that quote and my skin crawled. The ludicrous waving off of any response that made any sense. The hiding in the masculinity of football. You got a winning team, you got a losing team. And then the sense that if anyone was worried or not handling a loss right, that it'd be a woman, right? And so, don't worry, ma'am. We've got this. You leave this to the men like me. I mean, it's incoherent, it's insane, it's absurd, it's beyond stupid, but this works. It works. Don't you worry, little lady. And then I found out, did you know this? That part of Project 2025, that, huge blueprint that was drawn up by the Heritage Foundation and others that is now being implemented before our eyes. One of the things in Project 2025 is the privatization of early warning systems. and safety infrastructure. Yep. Yep. Project 2025. Can you imagine? A private system, pay to play. Hey, if you want to know if there's a hurricane coming, you got to pay this corporation. They're the ones that got the stuff, the info. And if it were privatized, well, there's no money to be made in the vast expanse of much of America, the rural areas, exactly the areas that were hit by this flood. There ain't many people there, and where there ain't many people, you ain't gonna make much money. I just, uh, and we do know that NOAA and Oceanic and Atmospheric Group is essentially no longer giving satellite data to the hurricane forecasters. And we know that the Weather Service has suffered huge losses. We also know, just happened yesterday, that our Supreme Court, I'm so shocked, has given the nod, the go ahead for Donald Trump to throw out federal workers left, right, and center. Oh, it's sort of temporary. Nobody knows. It was on that shadow docket, and there's no verbiage goes along with it. Just blah, 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 blah. And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissenting, howling voice in the wilderness. So I just, guys. Oh, yeah. And the IRS says, churches, you want to make political endorsements? You go right ahead. Oh, no, 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 no. Your tax exempt status is fine. We ain't going to touch you. You just, yeah, yeah. And that's so all those evangelical churches can just go totally all in, which they've done anyway. I mean, there's so many, that law dates back to 1964. There are so many laws that are not really uh, enforced. And when a law is not enforced, it doesn't really exist, and it breeds contempt in general for all law. Okay, so I just wanted to have one more. Uh, I saw this other thing that just made my heart sink. I think it was Perry Bacon writing in the Washington Post. And it was a piece in which he said, Democrats just don't ever get it. We're thinking, ha, 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 you just wait till those Medicaid cuts hit his base, till their rural hospitals close down, all that stuff. You just wait. And he wrote a piece that will, again, ratchet up one's despair, saying, no, it's not going to hurt him. You know why? Because his base has shown over and over again that they don't blame him for any of their ills. I mean, take Kentucky, or take West Virginia, or whatever. Literally, hundreds of thousands of people in those states who never had health insurance finally got it because of Democrats in Washington through Obamacare, through Medicaid expansion, all of that stuff. Democrats come in and they make people healthier. They give them things they've never had. And if you look at the states where the most people gained from democratic policies, or the opposite, where the states where most people suffer when Republicans, take things away from them, those states have never rewarded Democrats for what they've done for them. Never. Democratic gubernatorial candidates have spent the last several election cycles constantly telling the voters in Georgia and Texas and all those red states that their Republican governors are not expanding Medicaid, where in the state next door they have and they can, and people would get health care. People would, and your governor, your Republican governors are refusing to do it. They're keeping that from you. And the Republicans keep winning. Arkansas, Kentucky, West Virginia. Those 3 states did. Those are red states that expanded Medicaid when they had Democrats in the governor's race, in governor's mansions. Huge drops in the number of uninsured in those states. Yet in the same time, the Republicans became even more dominant in those states and in the national elections. So, ain't going to happen. The voters are not going to punish Donald Trump or the Republicans for taking things away from them, for closing their hospitals. The Republicans have not suffered one whit in states in which they have deprived people of their health care. So I don't know. How does one not begin to despair? How does one answer that question that David Brooks poses? Another person that I read, who has always tried to be, positive, has lost it. I mean, she wrote something today in which she's actually begging people to, please, if you have any way of helping me, get out of the fetal position, you please let me know. And when the person that others look to for that is herself lying under her bed, yow. So she mentions how, and I've been meaning to talk about this because I've had this happen to me, where I will say something and then somebody will take issue with me because I didn't note, let's say, the race of the person or the gender. I somehow didn't, this is Alyssa Wald speaking. She says, I used to post on Facebook quite a lot, but I really don't anymore for so many reasons. And one is that for years now, it seems no one could post anything without being told how much they sucked. Yeah. So if you post about, say, here's what I've seen as well. If you post about, say, kids dying in a flood, you were then apt to be asked why it only mattered to you when certain kids died. Exponentially more kids are dying, after all, in other places right now. You haven't posted about them. Do only American kids matter? or white kids matter. If you respond with grief to a terror attack somewhere, you suck because you hadn't posted about a terror attack somewhere else. And I have found this to be so true. And she said, how the hell can you possibly avoid being accused of, leaving some suffering out when you're talking about some other suffering? And she says, well, I guess you could post about every disaster everywhere, unless you ignore the wrong one. And soon your feed would be just one endless performative series of obituaries, or you could post about none of them and risk being seen as frivolous, the walking embodiment of privilege. Um, and she just ends up saying, I give it up. And anyway, she says, it all feels so pointless. Because once an openly would-be dictator has tried to overthrow the government, once he has tried to murder half of the Congress and been decisively re-elected, what could be the earthly use of pointing out that yet another thing he's done is illegal, or unconstitutional, or patently corrupt, or insane, or senseless, or profoundly sociopathic, or all of the above? That's despair. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna stop that particular line right now. It's it's too depressing. uh, I'm sorry. I'm just reading a few of your. Uh, okay, so um, let me do something. Start up something that's totally benign, seemingly, but it's a question that I'm curious about. I read a lot, but when it comes, and most of the reading I do is news, it's journalism. It's I from the time I've been a child, I have wanted to know what's going on in the world, and so I've always read news, and but when it comes to picking up a book, it is rare for me to pick up a book that is not fiction. When I read for pleasure, I read fiction. And what I have, over a lifetime of reading fiction and talking to others about books they're reading, always looking for recommendations, it has become so clear that most men, heterosexual men, do not read fiction. And I didn't know if it was just like the ones I was bumping into, but then I read the other day, and the headline is Men Are Disappearing from a Literary Circle. All the book clubs are overwhelmingly female run, females belong. Men don't read fiction. And it's fascinating to me in that that is such a divide. And I'm wondering what's behind it. Men used to read fiction. And then I think of all the, if I were to get a guy who says, oh, I just read history, biography, maybe, but that's, um, but I was thinking, there's a quote in here from one of the people at Simon and Schuster, the publisher, and he says our competition isn't other publishers, it's social media, it's gaming, it's streaming, all these other things that are vying for people's attention. Um, well, but that's true for women too. Maybe not the gaming as much, but yeah, I play a lot. I don't do video games, but I play games. Um, I'm wondering why that is, because fiction allows escape, allows imagination. And often, believe me, the escape it offers is into hell. I mean, I just finished 2 books, and both of them were heavy, 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 heavy. And it was fiction. I'm thinking, what? Why aren't I reading something a little happier? Because that's what I think I would need. But then I was thinking, if I were to make a recommendation to a man who hasn't um, who hasn't read fiction for a long time, if ever. I mean, not since they were assigned in school. What kind of fiction would grab a guy who only reads history and blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, my God, one of the best, I mean, for me, one of the best novels, I mean, page turner is Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, right? What history reading guy wouldn't love that novel, Lonesome Dove? Or then you get into my God, you want something that's just Cormac McCarthy stuff? And who's more like masculine than Ernest Hemingway? He wrote fiction. I wonder what it's about. And it didn't used to be thus, so I'm just wondering. At best, I think some men will read a graphic novel. I read a review of one recently, and I think I'm gonna buy it. It's not what I normally read, but that is a whole other interesting genre. My problem with graphic novels is I get they're so slow going for me because I get lost in every drawing. And I mean, I in a half hour, I'm lucky to get 2 or 3 pages done because there's so much there. Because a non-graphic novel, you're making the pictures in your own head, and that happens as you read. Anyway, it's something I've been wanting to ask, and if any of you have a clue, I'd be curious to know what what that's about. I have wanted uh, to bring this up and to find out what's behind that, guys. Just asking. Okay. And if some of you will read if you will read oh, I got another one. And this, oh no, no, wait. How about a history book that reads like a novel? And this is the one that I am, and it's short and sweet. It's a little teeny one, and it's even sort of localized. And it is The Johnstown Flood by David McCullough. Guys, and it's not a novel, but I gobbled it because it read like a novel. It's just wonderful. I got a caller here. Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, I don't have a clue, but to your last point, sure, anything by McCullough is just absolutely rich. I mean, the Wright brothers go all the way back to John Adams. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a true treasure. And I'll confess to being a white male who probably reads voraciously 70%, I would have to say, history, biography. That 30% of nonfiction that I read is just, to me, just provides riches beyond compare. And the reason why I said I don't have a clue is because I find that most of my peers, most of my friends don't read at all. Anything. Let alone, let alone kind of breaking it down between fiction and nonfiction. Hardly anybody reads a book anymore. But I want to jump back to the other thing, if you'll allow me, Lynn. But I'll just say before that, I'll give you one suggestion. There's an American author who is also another treasure. His name is Mark Helprin, Helprin, and he's written many books. Has an absolutely fascinating history, being part of the intelligence community going way back. But anyway, one of his more recent books is called Paris in the Present Tense. And it's another one of those that I think if you're have kind of I should even say it, a male temperament or a male sensibility, I think you would find as a man reading that novel particularly fulfilling. But can I go back, if you'll allow me, to despair?
Of course.
So you think we have talked, I think we have referred at different times here over the years to Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
And Viktor Frankl, was the Austrian Jewish psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps
and wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
For meaning, right. And his main premise out of that experience was that, and this is a quote, despair is suffering without meaning, unquote. And when he came back from the camps and founded what has become known as logotherapy, he really turned psychoanalysis and everything that went before it on its head, because the typical person or atypical person who comes into therapy comes in with the perspective of, what can I get out of life? What does life offer me? He would say, what is life expecting from you? And if you think about that, it turns the self-centeredness, the individuality that you were talking about earlier, that Brooks was referring to, it turns that on its head, and he ties that into the idea of that if you are suffering, if you are in despair and you are suffering, but you have no meaning that is larger than yourself, then that will truly be the end of you.
That's right.
And so, the so for whatever message is contained in my comment here for people, you know, the challenge for all of us in this time is to find a higher meaning rather than, you know, focusing on our particular individual, you know, circumstances, for lack of a better way of saying it. So that's all. I just wanted to.
No, that is so right. And I don't know if did you happen to see David Brooks' piece in the Atlantic, because he does talk about that purpose.
Yeah, I did not see that one, but I've read pretty much every word that David Brooks has ever written and watched all of his videos as well. So no, I missed that one. Was that actually the most recent one?
I think it's one of the most recent Atlantic. I think it is, but okay. I'm notoriously forgetful of where I see things. But you know,
he's wonderful.
Yeah, how cultures used to have, you know, before the sense of individualism, you know, and the Enlightenment and all that, people were born into positions in society, and you knew what your purpose was. You were a this, you were a that, and you know. But I can see where at some point we would say, well, we can't have that. We believe in, you know, opportunity and the ability to choose your own way. But somehow you can see how there's positives in that more constrained approach to life, and there's real dangers in the open-ended approach to life that we exist in, that anything is possible.
That's right. It's too simplistic a word, but it's people were born into a role.
Yes.
You know, a role, a place
right.
in a bigger picture, regardless of what people decided to do with their individual careers or jobs or whatever. There was a sense of being part of a larger whole that was in many ways uniform and predictable and in a sense required of you. And that's gone, long gone.
Oh, well, thank you. And thanks for mentioning Viktor Frankl. I do have that book right here, right behind me. And it's again, for those of you who maybe never, it's a thin, it's easily read, although it packs a wallop. But
that's right.
Thank you.
That's right. And so don't despair, my friend.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh man. God bless you. Milton says everything David McCullough writes reads like historical fiction. Excellent stuff. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that he bridges that fiction nonfiction gap. I'll tell you another. Oh, I just remembered another historical, a fiction book that is historical fiction and is just fascinating. Is Gore Vidal's Lincoln. Wow, just wow. I should reread that. It's been a long time. So yeah, I think, you know, reading reading about other times or other places is a real respite. Oh gosh, guys. So listen, one of the things I wanted to tell you that I read that just made me chuckle a bit was, I think it was yesterday I saw it in the New York Times, and it's about protests that have erupted in Mexico, Mexico City especially, and there are people taking to the streets, and they're angry because of foreigners. moving there. I went nuts. Wait a minute. They're in the streets in Mexico, anti-immigrant marches in Mexico? Yeah. And you know who the immigrants are that they want out? Americans. Yep. Wait, do I have somebody there? Wait a minute. Do I have somebody there? Caller. Wait a minute. Is there a caller there that I don't know about? I don't know. Is there a caller there? Excuse me. Oh, I think I just dropped myself out. God damn it. I'm sorry. I just screwed up and can't take. Forgive me. I think there was a caller and I knocked her off, myself off. Forget it. Damn it. Anyway, not a lot of time. So I just want to clarify this. So what they're screaming in the streets is gringo, go home. I love it. Or speak Spanish or die. Wow. How's that for some like little bit of reversal? Weird. I'm serious. It's happening. And the reason is Mexico City is, first of all, it is the largest city in North America, in the whole Western, I think, in North America or in the Western Hemisphere. No, North America. And it's huge, bigger than New York City, Mexico City. And turns out, I didn't know this, that a lot of rich Americans have moved to Mexico City. Now, they might well have homes also in the United States, but they've moved to Mexico City. They can work from they do remote work of some sort, and they are paying top dollar in certain neighborhoods. And what they're doing is gentrifying parts of Mexico City, and people who have lived in Mexico City all their lives are being displaced. The rich Americans are coming in and rents are rising, food prices are rising, little grocery stores are now becoming trendy restaurants and clothing boutiques, and entire neighborhoods are being transformed by the gringos' money. And they often don't speak Spanish. And in fact, it's expected in those neighborhoods that the Mexicans will speak English. So one can understand Mexicans perhaps not appreciating this. A study was published last year about housing affordability in Mexico City. The prices have quadrupled in recent years. Quadrupled. And in some of these gentrified neighborhoods, you're seeing an 8-fold increase in housing prices. It's assumed that as many as 23,000 Mexican families have been displaced, I guess, can no longer live in the homes that they were because they simply can't afford them anymore. So I just wanted to let you know that because there's something. Here, I'll read you a sign. Respect the locals and their culture or leave, one of the signs says. Mexicans first, one of the signs said. And there's a whole group called Mexicans in Defense of the Nation. And what they're defending against is the damn rich Americans buying things up, altering their neighborhoods, refusing to meld with the dominant culture around them, refusing to learn the local language, and instead just staying in their glorious, expensive apartments and going to their Pilates studios and their specialty food stores and all of the lovely little businesses that have sprouted up around them. So there you have it. Oh, God, you can't make it up. My apologies to the caller. I'm really sorry. I screwed that up big time, but that's what I do. If it has to do with figuring out what button to push on this dang computer, odds are I'm going to push the wrong one.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.
Upload tape.